This AI and Automation In-Depth special is sponsored by Microsoft. Welcome to the latest program in the In-Depth series from FedGov Today. On this program, we'll look at AI and automation in depth. I'm the host of FedGov Today, Francis Rose. Employees at the General Services Administration are test driving what the agency calls a, quote, early stage artificial intelligence tool. The GSA tool is only one example of how agencies are using AI and automation to streamline operations, move employees from lower value to higher value tasks, and drive efficiency. On this program, you'll go in-depth with movers from government and industry that are driving results in AI and automation. Leaders from the Department of Transportation, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and Microsoft are here to discuss what they're doing now, what it means, and what's ahead for AI and automation and for government-industry collaboration. We begin with Nelly Babayan, AI Director for the Federal Civilian Sector at Microsoft. Nelly, welcome. Thanks for joining me. What are some of the examples that you've seen of agencies that are using AI and automation for efficiency the way that I just described?
Well, thank you, Francis, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about how we are helping our customers across federal agencies to adopt AI in a meaningful and secure way. What we're seeing really that agencies are engaging in enriching employee experience, using AI to automate some of the tasks that may be menial or repetitive to make sure that they are focused on more meaningful, responsibilities and tasks. They're also reinventing how they're engaging with their customers, the American people, with the help of AI, reshaping some of the mission and business processes. And what's also very interesting for us, and especially for me, is how they're bending the curve on innovation and using AI to enrich science and research.
You talked about customer experience within the agencies. How are you advising organizations in government to evaluate the possibilities of using AI, either what to apply the AI tools to or how to evaluate the potential use cases and determine whether AI is a good solution for it?
Absolutely. I always tell our customers, like, let's understand the use cases and scenarios that you have and then see if and how we can apply AI to those use cases. Start with understanding what are the problems, requirements, and where you want to be, what are the success criteria, so making sure that the lives of your employees are getting better with the use of AI. And after that, we can then match those to specific capabilities.
I talked to a federal CIO last week who said of all of the technologies that this person had been around government for a long time, AI was the one where use cases really were prominent instead of agencies saying, oh, this is a new technology, we should go get it and use it. What do you think is driving that, kind of reversing that curve?
I believe the AI is pervasive now. It's everywhere. And the threshold of entry to the AI has never been lower. And the government employees and anyone else can get their hands on the AI tools in their everyday life. So that probably is also driving the speed of how we are deploying AI applications.
We've talked about the good stuff so far. What are the risks and what are the challenges that you've either seen in working with your customers in government or that exist as agencies get more and more into the AI?
I believe as we are starting to deploy AI across the government agencies, the questions of data governance come up. Knowing where your data is, what kind of data you have, who has access to that data are very important and need to be dealt with while and also sometimes before we start deploying AI. But, and also there are specific attack vectors that can be brought up with the AI, but something that we're also helping our customers to solve those problems with the suite of solutions that we have in our portfolio.
It's tempting to just talk about the AI and forget about the automation piece of what we're focusing on this program. What are you seeing as far as agencies marrying those two concepts together and using both of them maybe individually as well?
You are very on trend, Francis, because we're talking a lot about agentic AI, and that's really not simply just asking questions to the chatbot, but really having it perform specific tasks that then can be refined by a human. So even if we're automating some tasks with AI, with agentic AI, the human still stays in the loop, and we're making sure that with AI we're enhancing how we perform our responsibilities rather than replacing.
What does the learning curve look like? Because it strikes me that maybe 18 months or 2 years ago, we were just starting to talk about artificial intelligence, and it developed. The agentic is kind of the latest evolution in that curve. Maybe there are still people who are still catching up as far as rank and file agency people who are being introduced to these tools from a task solution perspective. Is that a fair read on my part?
Absolutely, and sometimes with technology, the learning curve can be difficult. But I believe with AI, especially with the beauty of the tools that we're also providing is that they cater to different skills and different tasks and responsibilities and backgrounds, because you can have those low code or no code solutions that we provide, but also solutions that are code first, where you need to know some programming and languages. So again, I have to repeat here that the entry to the AI, the threshold has never been lower. And that is because there's so many tools right now that you can use to enhance what you're doing.
I want to expand on a question in the time that we have left in this part of the program that I touched on earlier, and that is, how do you advise people to think about use cases and examine tasks that they're performing or duties that they have and determine whether an AI or automation tool is going to be the right fit? Because it strikes me it's probably still really tempting for these agencies to say, we should automate something, and not necessarily think about what the business case or the end result is.
Absolutely. I talk to all of our federal customers. And sometimes we hear that we have a handful of use cases, or we may have 200 use cases. And in those cases, my advice is always to know how to prioritize those use cases. What is the mission impact, first of all, of that use case? What is the time to implement or feasibility of doing maybe a proof of concept for that use case or a pilot? What is also, what are the risks associated with not even doing the use case, but not implementing AI, because we don't want to be left behind of our competition or adversaries. So risk is also one of those components, and of course the feasibility of implementation and the success criteria. What do you want to get out of that use case?
All right, you stay here. We'll talk more about pilots and tests in a moment. We'll take a quick break, and then you'll meet leaders from the Transportation Department and DARPA when AI and Automation in Depth continues in a moment. Welcome back to AI and Automation in Depth. Federal agencies say they're looking at AI and automation through two lenses. One is how they'll use AI for their own operations. The other is how AI will impact aspects of how the nation goes about its business in the areas the agency covers. Joining the conversation on AI and Automation in Depth, Matt Turk, Deputy Director of the Information Innovation Office at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and Mike Horton, Chief AI Officer at the Department of Transportation. Nelly Babayan of Microsoft joins me again as well. Thanks all of you for being here today. Matt, I want to start with you. You have a little bit different take on AI and the way that you approach it and the way that you research it at DARPA. Tell me what's different about the way a typical federal agency uses AI versus what you're doing at DARPA. So
DARPA is an interesting agency. We have the singular mission of preventing or creating strategic surprise that really dates back to Sputnik 1958, an event that created strategic surprise for the nation. So we're at DARPA really looking to create those transformational technologies. And so from an AI perspective, what do we need to consider when using AI in high-stakes settings, like on the battlefield for military medicine or for other tasks. And so those are some of the problems that we're focused on.
What I think is fascinating about the scope of what you're looking at is, I think somebody like me figures Department of Defense and an organization like DARPA using AI, we go to battlefield tools right away. And you just mentioned medicine, and there's a broad range of things that I imagine that you're researching regarding AI. Is that a fair read on my part?
Yeah, for sure. Again, you're hearing a lot from the agency about lethality and war fighting, and DARPA is part of the Department of Defense. So again, we're looking at those transformational AI technologies through that lens of national security challenges, national competitiveness challenges. DARPA's investments in AI really date back into the 60s. So very early on, DARPA was an investor in some of that foundational technology. The term AI was coined about that time. And we've continued to invest in different styles and types of AI, what we refer to as waves of AI, either symbolic approaches to AI, statistical approaches to AI, which is really driving things like large language models now.
I want to come back to that idea later in the program if we have time. Mike, welcome. It's great to see you. I referenced at the beginning of this conversation that agencies are looking at AI from kind of two different camps. Transportation is one of those. I saw on your website talking about the way that you're approaching AI. You're thinking about it within the agency, and you're also thinking about it broadly across the transportation grid. How does that impact the way that you do your job at the department and the way that and the kinds of things that you decide to focus on?
Thank you very much for having me. A little bit different than what's going on over at DARPA. It's what I call the difference between the vertical and the horizontal. So when you talk about the vertical, it's very much what DARPA is doing, is very much what happens within my own organization. I have a very strong and great group of researchers that are there that are reaching out and doing those things that are necessary for protecting the national airspace, for really taking care of transportation for all Americans. But my focus from inside the organization, we're more operationally focused, which is really the horizontal piece of what I'm talking about, where I'm trying to scale things in order to increase efficiencies, increase productivity of the regular worker that's within the department itself. So a little bit of different focus with what's going on. We have, as with every organization that's out there, and I'm sure you see it a lot, where we get especially senior people and people that are developers and very excited about the new next shiny thing that's out there. I think one of the things that we're figuring out right now is that when we start reaching for those vertical things, we may get stuck very quickly in what we call proof of concept purgatory, where we're not getting out of there. We're not really getting any juice, any return of investment within because of that. So trying to get people to focus off of those shiny things, the great stuff that DARPA is doing, that's their job. My job is to try and kind of spread the wealth and to scale things out. So just a little bit of different view.
You used a term recently, writing about a term called personification regarding some of what you talked about there. What's your definition of that word, and how does that apply to the way that people are using artificial intelligence, or the way that you want them to use it inside the agency?
Oh, absolutely. Personification to me is everything. So what that's really talking about is treating every AI use case as its own AI worker, as its own AI employee. When you take that view, you now have a new prism that you can look through. So when I talk about it, and of course when I'm explaining it to executives and to others, I can say you wouldn't hire an employee, sit them in a cubicle, even if they memorize the internet, and then start asking them questions about your business and think they're going to give you good answers. What you need to do is you need to educate them, you need to give them feedback, you need to evaluate them, and it needs to be constant. These are the types of things that we should be thinking about with our AI employees, that AI workforce that we're trying to build. And then we can start looking at things like, what's the security I need to have around that employee? Who's that employee talking to? Who am I going to allow it to talk to? What data can that AI employee have access to? Those types of things. That fundamental change really allows us to sit down and look at how do we take our current foundation that we have and make it as agile and as responsive as it's going to be needed as we walk through all of the chaos that we're all dealing with right now and uncertainty as we deal with this new technology.
Nelly, you and I talked in the first part of this program about evaluating use cases and all of that, and as I hear these two government leaders talking about what they're doing, it strikes me I might have been thinking about this wrong. I'm thinking about, here's a problem, AI is a potential solution for it, maybe kind of a linear way. They're doing linear things, but they're going a whole bunch of different directions. What do you advise people who find themselves in that situation to do to try to tie all of those things together as best they possibly can to avoid that concept of chaos that Mike just talked about?
Yep. Thanks for having me back, Francis. And I agree. What we tell our customers to do is understand the use case, understand the requirements and what you need to accomplish, and then perhaps AI is the right solution for that, but in some cases it may not be. So we shouldn't be treating AI as the panacea for everything, but rather as another tool, another solution that can help us with our problems, and that's exactly what Mike and Matt are doing. And I want to go back and say how much I liked actually Mike's reference to a POC purgatory. Because we do see sometimes we're being stuck in that POC purgatory, doing another pilot after another pilot without really realizing the value of technology. And that stems from perhaps not setting the success criteria from the beginning.
What do you guys do inside the agencies to move from that pilot and test to actually doing something or giving somebody a green light that they can move forward, anything like that? You want to go first on that one, Matt?
Sure. I mean, this is actually one of the core problems, challenges for creating some of that transformational research is one, identifying the right customers and then getting that technology to them. There's this concept of a valley of death in that transition process. So DARPA pays quite a bit of attention to that. We have liaison officers for different branches of service embedded in the organization to help with that process. We structure our research programs specifically to think about, okay, if we're wildly successful, what does transition, i.e. taking that capability, getting it in the hands of warfighters, what does that look like? What evidence do we need to produce to convince those downstream users to take our technology? So that's something that we think about quite a bit. It's a different process for every program because every solution capability that we come up with is different, has different downstream customers. So there's not like a one-size-fits-all recipe, but it's something that we think about quite a bit.
Is that measure of wildly successful as simple as this was the original problem and now this is a much better outcome, or is it more complicated than that?
Well, we think about a couple things. So every DARPA program has defined technical criteria that we're trying to meet, and that's derived from what effect we're trying to have on the world. Why are we creating this technical capability? But we're also thinking about concretely, again, what evidence do we need to provide to downstream customers? How do we define the success and the impact of the program, maybe from an operational or from a transition perspective? So there's the technical dimension, there's the transition to partners dimension, and again, we tend to try and have quantitative measures of how we assess that, and again, different for every program.
Mike, how do you manage that test and pilot to project production chain?
Oh, it's crazy. That's like 90% of my job is trying to figure out how to get that thing done. And really what Matt's talking about is that return on equity on the operational side and making sure that actually makes sense. From the very beginning, when there's at the ideation stage, we ask every use case to go ahead and provide with us what is the potential benefit, what's the outcome that you're looking for. Remember, AI ain't free is one of my sayings that I always have. So everything that you're talking about is not like traditional technology. It's going to cost money to build this AI employee, and it's going to cost more money for the care and feeding of that AI employee as you move on. So we have to be very careful when we're starting to make those investments that there is some benefit for the mission to the business, but also for the taxpayer. Does it make sense for us being able to do that? We often find at the end of that POC that, yes, you may have solved the problem, but this problem is this big and you spent this much money on it. So let's not perpetuate that.
Yeah. You said something there that I think is interesting, and I don't know if people are paying enough attention to it. I think there's a perception that once we build a bot, once we build an employee, as you refer to that AI solution, that it just will run and run and run like an RPA bot. And it's not the same. Are people thinking about that when they're thinking about the constructs that they want to use artificial intelligence for?
No, they are absolutely not. That's why I have a T-shirt that says AI ain't free with the capital AI in the ain't.
Should have worn it.
But it is so important. This is not your regular technology. There is so much that goes into, just like I was talking about before, that personification and understanding that you need to educate and give feedback and then evaluate, and that's constant, and it's not in that order, it's just constant, all three of those things. That all costs money. Data and AI is different than the technology where you buy it and then later on the cost may drop off as you're doing things. With AI and data, the more you use it, the more it's going to cost. There's consumption costs, there's all kinds of things. People are not looking at that when they're starting to talk about these things, so they don't understand the return on investment proposition that you need to put in.
Nelly, you and I talked earlier in the program about the risks and challenges that agencies are thinking about or should be thinking about. Are there other kind of, maybe unintended consequences isn't the right word, but other aspects of using these technologies that Mike referred to, the ongoing costs and all of that, that agencies should be paying attention to at this point?
I believe when it comes to costs, it's not really all around consumption, right, or what you're spending on building an AI application, but also look at more holistically at what's happening across the organization as you start deploying AI. It may be actually reducing the other operational costs that you may be running into. And something else I wanted to reflect on what you mentioned around the bots or RPA. Something that I'm working also, and our teams are working with our customer, is going beyond those bots or chat bots, because that's not all this AI technology is about. I want to bring a quick example from our collaboration, for example, with the Department of Energy and one of their national labs. We partnered with their scientists to find a new element for more efficient batteries. And that was done thanks to the high-performance computing, AI, but also the genius of the lab scientists that work together. So it can go beyond chatbots, beyond RPA, and really make an impact on science and progress and how we store energy, for example.
You mentioned the high-performing computing that helped enable that discovery. Are there any infrastructure things that people like Matt and Mike should be thinking about, that anything that underpins the technologies that they're using for AI and automation that agencies will need more of, agencies will need less of, agencies will need redundancies, that kind of thing?
So when it comes to AI and when it comes to Microsoft, we are providing the infrastructure. We are providing the infrastructure, the high-performance computing. So you, the agencies, don't need to think about that anymore. You don't need to buy more GPUs or think about your data centers, but rather they're using the platform that we're providing, and then they can innovate on that platform without the burden of thinking about the data centers.
Matt, one example that you wrote about recently, it goes back to my idea at the beginning of our conversation about what people think about when they think about AI and DoD, is the Securing Artificial Intelligence for Battlefield Effective Robustness program, the Saber program. Tell me about that, and tell me what you think you can learn from that that will apply to maybe to some of the other areas of AI deployment.
Yeah, so that's really an investment in red teaming, so being able to attack AI systems, understand what their weaknesses and vulnerabilities are. That's actually critically important for our own adoption of AI capabilities. The reason why DARPA is investing in that is there's academic research in the area, but most of it's not done in realistic settings. It assumes that you have direct access to the model. There's not the entirety of the system around it, either at training time or operations time. And so the academic research right now isn't really well aligned with how you would actually use AI in an operational sense. So we really want to understand that key question better, do things like adversarial attacks on AI as exemplified by some academic research. Is that something that is really of concern? Is that a real threat? Is that caught by other pieces of the system that AI is embedded in? And so that's the focus of the Saber program. But again, that will help us calibrate and understand those risks, and that calibration allows us then hopefully to accelerate our own adoption, our use of AI, and do that in appropriate ways.
How will you measure that that's happening or not happening, that you'll get to the hopefully that you just described?
Yeah, so like I said, each DARPA program has its own unique measurement process. For Saber, we're actually taking autonomous ground, autonomous air platforms, and sort of defined in operationally relevant settings. Here are the different attack vectors that we want to explore, and then the success on attacking that, on preventing the team that's using that system from accomplishing a mission goal is really the overarching measure of whether a particular attack is successful or not.
We've spent a lot of time on this program so far thinking about today and where organizations are today. And for the time that we have left, 3-4 minutes, I want to think about the future. Mike, what are you thinking about now as far as strategically, I guess, more so than tactically, about where you would like to be in a year or where you would like to be in 3 years, understanding that concepts come that we weren't thinking, nobody was thinking about agentic AI a year ago, probably. But how do you build kind of a plan for the future in that respect?
We're dealing with this all the time. So one of the things we all know is that whatever I'm about to say, I'm wrong. And it'll be wrong in 6 months. But when we're looking at these types of things that are coming about, my biggest concern is trying to figure a way not to lose the human side of things as we're using AI to do the processes and procedures and things that are going on. Quick example, if you're using AI to do your meeting notes, that's one thing. But if you're not engaging in the meeting anymore and just letting the AI tell you what the summary is, and you're not part of the process anymore, you've taken yourself out of that process, I'm trying to figure out how do we deal with that? How do I keep you engaged and allow the AI to support what it is that you're doing instead of replacing what it is that you're doing? So getting that functionality together and getting an overall infrastructure that will be able to adjust as we're starting to come across those things and start building the infrastructure and the training and everything else that goes into it in order to enhance what people and what humans bring to the process. That's what I'm trying to figure out over the next couple of years.
We have about a minute left, Nelly. What do you recommend that people like Mike and Matt do to strategize for the next year, 2 years, and out?
I would say probably use your strategic partners as much as you can, and because we're always here to help you with that strategizing and building the roadmap and advising on what is coming and how we can prepare for what is coming, and really to empower everyone within your organization to achieve more.
Nelly, Mike, Matt, thank you all very much for joining me. I appreciate it very much. And thank you for watching AI and Automation in Depth, sponsored by Microsoft. If you missed any part of this program, you can watch the show in its entirety on our website at fedgovtoday.com or the FedGov Today YouTube channel. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks again for watching. Goodbye.